Hey, it's Jack, and this video is the number one thing that may be sabotaging your relationships. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I'd love for you to do that. You can just click the button in the right-hand corner of the screen, and make sure you also tap that bell notification because that will let you know as soon as new videos or announcements come out. So, what is the number one thing that I see, based on thousands of hours of coaching in this area now, that has people sabotaging their relationships? And so I'm going to get right into it. The number one thing that I see is fear of rejection, and how fear of rejection has people showing up inauthentically. It has them not revealing their true impulse and desire. It has them pushing people away when actually what they really want is to bring people closer. It has them in a state of fear and paralysis and doubt and lacking inner confidence because you're afraid the other person at some point is going to stop wanting to see you, stop wanting to get to know you, say something that in your world lands as rejecting. And that fear of rejection actually stops you really being your true self. And if you know anything about my work, it's all about helping you be more of who you really are so that you can be that in your life and in your relationships. You can be loved for who you really are, both by yourself and by someone else. So this video is about fear of rejection. I wanted to do something specifically on this, and I'm going to give you 3 ways that you might open up to looking at how you experience rejection and perhaps being able to relax that impulse and do something differently. All right, so let's get into this. The first thing that you can do to relax your fear of rejection is actually to get more aware of when you reject other people. What I found, both in my personal experience and my coaching experience, is that those of us that reject a lot or that have a high fear of rejection, we actually do a decent amount of our own rejecting. So there's kind of like a, karmic law here that sort of what goes around comes around. So if you're fearing other people's rejection, you want to take a look, if you can, and see whether you reject other people. And I really, really want to invite your maximum curiosity here, right? It may be that this doesn't apply to you at all, but I've seen it apply to a lot of people, and I've seen the curiosity bring a new awareness of, yeah, actually, you know what? And it might be in subtle ways, it might be in snide ways, it might be in kind of micro-rejecting ways that you actually reject or judge other people. And there can be a particular component of this, which is where the fear of rejection comes in, is that you might engage in what we could call preemptive rejection. And what that means is you have a fear that I'm going to reject you, so you see me off at the pass and reject me before I have this opportunity to reject you, whether that was based on any reality or not. I remember when I studied politics at the University of Cambridge, and that was soon after 9/11, and there was talk of this shift in American foreign policy to a preemptive strike foreign policy, that if we have a fear that you are going to do something bad to us, we are going to take that as legitimate means that we might come and, rain down fire on you. And, without getting into the whole kind of history of the Bush administration, that at the time was kind of like a shocking idea to me, that like, wow, just on a suspicion that you might do something bad, we're going to come do something bad to you first. And so I bring that in because there's this kind of preemption that happens in fear of rejection, that I get this whiff, I get this sense, I get this unease that you're going to say something or do something that has me feel rejected. So then I get strong and I push you away. I don't need you. I didn't even want to be with him anyway. He doesn't have the high standards that I need in a relationship. I'm a high standards person. You may have found yourself saying these things, right? And it could be that they're true. I'm just inviting you to look a little deeper and say, what is the actual emotional experience that underlies those things? When you go to make someone wrong or minimize them, right? Because there can often be a superiority, inferiority, right? So if you go to minimize and make someone inferior, look at this. This is kind of just the law of the world, it seems to me, that when you're making someone inferior, it's because you're making yourself superior, and your need to be superior is often based upon a discomfort that you might actually feel inferior, or that you're afraid that someone might see you as inferior, so you're kind of preemptively defending and protecting yourself from your deeper experience. So number one here is to invite your curiosity. Are there ways that you reject other people subtly or grossly? And if that's true, why are you doing that? And have you even noticed that you're doing that? All right, so the second thing I want to unpack in terms of fear of rejection is, let's say that you're perceiving it accurately and that I am rejecting you. What's really going on there? What's really going on there? If I'm consciously choosing to reject you, what if that is just on my side of the fence? Like, how might I be feeling if I feel a need to reject you, right? Not just to maybe say, hey, yeah, I don't want to do that thing with you, or I've already made plans, or I know we've been seeing each other, but maybe now it's not feeling so right for me. But if I actually reject you in a way that I want you to feel rejected, normally that's going to be coming from my own smallness, right? It's going to be coming from my own insecurities, my own defenses, my own wounds. So if you really start to get hip to this, you might be able to relax, because it's only really the wounded, hurt part of someone else that would actually actively want to reject you anyway, right? It's only their little girl or little boy, or the one in them that doesn't feel secure, the one in them that feels like they need to have power over someone else, right? We all have that within us. I'm not making that wrong. But if you really see that it's really it's the little one, it's the wounded one, it's the scared one, the afraid one that might reject you, you may be able to have more tolerance for it. You may actually be able, in the fullness of time, to invite your compassion to see like, oh, okay, yeah, this person's scared and hurt. That's why they're rejecting me. You know, when someone feels completely good and loving towards themselves in their power and essence, they don't tend to go around needing to reject people. Right? Oftentimes we're rejecting people to avoid our own vulnerability, to avoid our own intimacy with ourselves, to avoid the places that we don't like to notice that, yeah, you know, maybe we are stuck or frail or weak. And we don't want that, so we go around rejecting other people. So when you get that, it's sort of like it's only a part of people that might want to reject you, or it's their own kind of mental illness, it's their own frailty, it's their own wound or defense. When you really get that, you might start to be less afraid of it, right? In the same way that if you knew someone was mentally ill and they were saying, you know, difficult things to you or cussing to you, you might cut them some slack because you're like, oh, this could be the mental illness talking. Right? In the same way, could you cut someone else some slack like, oh, this is the wounded, hurt part of them that's talking to me, that's rejecting me. Maybe I'm still okay. Right? It might sting, it might hurt real bad. I'm not saying that you need to disavow the impact that has on you. Hey, when you walk down the street and someone who's mentally ill swears at you, that might have a really hard impact. You don't need to disavow your humanness and the impact. But you might not then turn around and create a story that, oh, I'm worthy of rejection, or people always reject me. That's what we're trying to avoid here, is that you go into some patterned stance towards other people where you're kind of on eggshells because you fear that they're going to reject you. If you're like, yeah, you know, sometimes I feel rejected. Sometimes it hurts really freaking bad and I feel rejected. Sometimes I feel rejected when people aren't even trying to reject me. Or sometimes even when I know people are rejecting me from the wounded part of themselves, I still feel bad. That's okay. You're human. And our humanness is our beauty. It's our vulnerability. You know, I'm even can feel myself slightly welling up as I say this. It's like the name of the game is not to become so freaking tough that you don't feel things from people, that they can't hurt you. The name of the game is that you let people in close enough that they can hurt you. And at the same time, when they do hurt you, you acknowledge that there's an impact, and that's your humanness, and that's the cost of intimacy and being close and being open to life. So that's kind of what I think we're taking aim at here. So let me introduce you to the third idea on fear of rejection. And this one's a little deeper in some ways. There's a thing that exists in objects relations theory called the rejection object relation. Some of you might have heard me in previous videos talk about the frustration object relation. Today I want to talk to you about the rejection object relation. So just to take a step back, what is an object relation? An object relation is the very early sense that the baby or child has of developing a sense that I'm a self and you are another person. So it's where self and other, or subject and object, starts to emerge. So once a child gets a sense of someone is other, someone is object, it's like, what is the feeling tone? What is the affect that goes along with that? And that feeling tone can often take the form of rejection. And it can either take the form of, I tend to feel rejected, or I tend to want to reject other people. So you can be on either side of this, right? Perhaps if you tend to feel like you reject other people, maybe you tend to identify as someone that's strong, big, cruel even, that you are tough, and that your orientation to weakness in other people is that you tend to reject them around them. Or you might be on the other side of this, which is that you tend to feel that you're small and weak and pure and innocent and vulnerable, and that other people aren't kind and they reject you, right? So there tends to be some narrative in this early sense that the child has, but we carry it in the background, often unconsciously throughout life until we look at it, that either I'm about to reject or I'm about to be rejected. Either I'm strong and kind of cruel and I like being tough and unkind to other people and I have a self-image and identity around that, or maybe my self-image and identity is that I consider myself a kind person, and I'm a kind person and other people are tough and cruel and they reject me. And the answer to this is actually to embrace all the parts that we have within us, right? There is a kind one in you. There is also probably a cruel one in you. You may not give it too much airtime, but oftentimes when people preach from the gospel of kindness, just go around being kind, that is not the only experience that they are having of life. They are normally suppressing, repressing, dissociating from the parts of themselves that are tough, or that are cruel, or that don't care, or that right now I would love to care, but actually I'm pissed off, or I'm frustrated, or I'm feeling like you're rejecting me. So a lot of this is about having the clarity and sobriety to get closer to your real experience of what is actually going on. And if you go around with a fear that other people are going to reject you, it may be that you're bringing a pattern from your very earliest sense of self and you are projecting that out onto other people. Right? Now, that's not to say that you haven't had your fair experiences of rejection. You probably have. But now you might want to get curious. Is there some way that I'm creating that? Is there some way that I'm confirming that I'm a kind, innocent person that other people beat up on, all right? Or that other people are cruel to, or other people have the power? Because that's the other thing. When you are in this smaller part of you, tendency to be rejected, you feel like the power is elsewhere. And again, you may have been in legitimate situations where the power was elsewhere, right? When it comes to paying your taxes, the power was probably not on your side, right? But you may also notice there's some situations where you take on the role unconsciously of, I'm the rejectee and I need a rejector to confirm my view of reality. And it's sort of like an unconscious game, and there's plenty of people that will play that game with you. But I'm saying that game is not the fullness of reality. It's not the fullness of the possibility of how to be in this world. And once you start to relax that in yourself, you may notice that other things start to show up, or even if the same person who is a rejector, objectively speaking, they go around rejecting people, that you don't need to fear them. That you don't need to be on eggshells, tentative, small, lacking confidence, not being yourself, being pleasing and ingratiating and playing small around people because you fear they're going to reject you. It may be that you can be like, oh, I notice you're rejecting me, and yeah, it's okay. Or I feel kind of vulnerable to that, but I don't need to spin out, and I don't need to keep creating this situation in my life where I'm always on one side of that equation. It's kind of like a seesaw. Right? So it needs two people. If you're the rejectee, you need a rejector. If you're a rejector, you need a rejectee. These are games that go together, So if you want to relax that game, you're going to start playing a different game, or maybe even no game with people, where we can show up with consciousness, we can show up with the fullness of ourselves and not have to do some kind of unconscious dance. So my aim with this video is to invite your inquiry into rejection in your life and to really spend some time. Hit your journal and ask yourself some of the questions that perhaps this video has provoked in you. Take a look at, are there ways that you reject people? Are there ways that you preemptively reject people? Are there ways that you reject yourself and parts of yourself? Because if this rejection thing is operating strongly in your life, you probably reject yourself in some of your experiences. Let's say you consider yourself confident. When you're insecure, you probably reject yourself. Let's say you consider yourself kind. When you're actually a little hateful or scared or difficult, you maybe reject that in yourself. Perhaps you associate that you're a high energy, go-getting person, and that when you're not that, when you're tired or you're sick or you're frail, you reject yourself. Right? Perhaps you think you are a holy person, and when you have unholy states like anger, you reject yourself and you reject your experience. By which I mean you don't acknowledge it, you push it away, you obliterate it in your consciousness, you look the other way. And again, I'm not making you wrong for that. I'm just inviting your curiosity as to, if that's going on, do I want to be doing that? Because if you reject parts of yourself and your experience, you can't but really reject other people. It's hard to run one kind of game on yourself and have another game reserved for other people. Maybe you do it, but in my experience, this whole thing kind of goes together, right? Our patterns are pervasive. They're reflected in every part of our life. So if you are rejecting of yourself, if your inner critic is running riot and is pushing certain parts of your experience out of your reality, you might want to take a look at that. Because the key to you not feeling rejected around other people may be that you completely understand and relax the parts in you that get rejected, and then you stop fearing that in other people, because most of the time if it's painful to be rejected, it's because someone else is starting to reject a part of you that you already have rejected. So now you've got shame. Right? Now you're confirming that, yes, this part of me was bad because that person sees it and I see it. And we want to do that the other way. We want to notice, hey, I have parts of myself that I might find difficult. I'm going to love on them. And if you want to come reject them, that's your game. That's your side of the fence. I don't need to play that with you. I'm doing my best to love myself. And for most of us, honestly, and again, I feel a bit teary, that's hard enough work anyway, right? It's hard enough anyway to love all the parts of ourselves, let alone have to worry about other people and how they're orienting to those parts. So keep it on your side of the fence. Do your own work. Relax those structures in yourself. And my sense is, if you're anything like most of the people I've coached with, the more you do that, the more the fear of rejection won't be a dominant fear in your life, and it won't be the thing that's sabotaging your relationships. If you've liked this video and you want to know more about these kind of unconscious roles that I'm talking about, and you haven't taken my webinar, I would love for you to take my webinar. Just find the link below this video, click that. You can choose a time that works for you in your time zone. But we really, me and my teaching partner Clayton, we really break out these unconscious roles that if you've never looked at them, and there's two dominant ones that we think at least are a big part in all relationships. If you've not looked at them, they're probably going to be sabotaging you without you even realizing it. So it's completely free. Find a time that works for you, take that webinar. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, come on, let's do it. Subscribe here. And as always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being with me.